Greetings. I'd like to go ahead and spend a few minutes discussing some of the ideas related to interviewing violent criminals. And I'm going to use an excellent article by Jeremy Quayle from the National Policing Improvement Agency in the United Kingdom. And this article is found in the Journal of Investigative Psychology and Offender Profiling. And it's published in 2008, Volume 5, pages 79 to 91, and it's titled Interviewing a Psychopathic Suspect. One of the first things I would point out is that we get a lot of information from the media, and a lot of that information may be very erroneous, or we may get some techniques or procedures or ideas that are problematic. For example, I would mention that if you've ever watched Dr. Phil interview someone who has been convicted or allegedly committed some serious violent crimes, he seems to basically just try to get one up on them and try to browbeat them and put them down. Those techniques, I believe, are actually very problematic and would not be helpful or useful at all. And so sometimes I teach my students, I say, if you want to learn how to interview violent offenders, watch certain interviews and then do the opposite. Now, I'm not saying that you're going to go ahead and treat them with the greatest dignity and respect in that regard, but what I'm going to say is that you approach it more as a neutral observer who has a keen interest in finding out what happened. And so let me get back to the article by Quayle. Points out that in looking at interviews that occur, and again, Quayle's talking about psychopathic suspects. So, you know, this is something, of course, we see in some cases of serial murder, and so that's relevant here. But remember, often you'll see that the suspect tries to outwit the interviewer, tries to basically control the interview, turn the interview around, frustrate the interviewer, and present a particular point of view and get the interviewer to accept that. And so you might find that occurring. You also will see that often the suspect may enjoy the attention that he or she gets from the interview and, of course, from the media attention. Also, you'll see the grandiosity and the arrogance that often is presented, and this can be very frustrating to someone who is interviewing a suspect, and if the interviewer begins to show that frustration and it begins to escalate, often the suspect will realize that they're gaining control of the interview. Sometimes they may try to shock the interviewer by telling them about some of the features of a crime, or how they would have committed a crime, or other crimes they've heard about, or something that they've been involved in. And often we'll see the suspect will have all kinds of rationalizations and presentations of why they're innocent and why a big mistake has been made. So some of the strategies that Quayle talks about for countering this type of suspect during the interview are as follows, and I think very helpful to begin to, I would recommend go to the UCF library and download this article and take a close look at it if you're going to be doing any interviewing of suspects, especially psychopathic suspects. But first of all, become very familiar with the case. We see that a lot of times that in the media you get someone, a so-called profiler out there, just saying all these things about the case, trying to make these assumptions and the like, and we find out that they're very wrong later on. Well, a lot of that probably has to do, they're not very familiar with the case. What they do is they get a little bit of information and they try to compare it to cases they're familiar with. Well, that can be a very faulty line to travel. The interviewer should present themselves with confidence and with their experience, and create an atmosphere where they have the authority and the formality embedded in their body movements, their tone of speech, and also keep it at the professional level. Now, Quayle points that there's no need to build rapport because the suspect really could care less about that. Quayle recommends avoid presenting one's own emotions, and try to also respond back to the suspect with an interest in learning more about what they have to say. Sometimes the suspect will react in a positive way if the interviewer compliments them on some things and shows some admiration in that regard. Always try to maintain control, but certainly don't over-control the interview, or for that matter lose the interview. And I think this is real important. Avoid criticism of the suspect or belittling and making negative statements. I've seen a lot of interviews where the interviewer comes in there and says, "You are a very bad person, and you tell me this and you tell me that," and it just doesn't work. When challenges are made, do that in a cautious way. And these are some very relevant ideas in thinking about interviewing. So if you're going to be interviewing suspects, of course you would go through training, but for psychopathic suspects I think you need the additional training for that specific group. Quayle also has a section on detecting deception in psychopathic subjects, and that also is very relevant. And there's some excellent books as well. But I think that this article really does a nice summary of giving you some information, first of all, about psychopaths or sociopaths, their characteristics, which we've already addressed in this course. Quayle does an excellent job going over that, and then again focusing on some of the problems faced by interviewers, and then after that how to overcome some of those challenges. And this wraps up this video. Thank you.